Let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons. They missed the playoffs, right? And they were the first of the coaching carousel as soon as the game was over, right? They wasted no time in
Yeah.
firing head coach Raheem Morris and general manager Terry Fontenot. I want to ask you, was this the right call to let both of those guys go?
I don't think so. This draft class has been a really good draft class for Terry Fontenot. I really struggle with that decision because I look at the guys that are playing major. They have two guys on their defense that are in top 5 for defensive rookie of the
Yep.
year this year. I don't really know what the expectations can be that are further than that. They ended the year on a hot streak. They won 4 games in a row. I understand that Raheem Morris might, you look at the talent in that division and you go, why can't we take a step forward? I get that. But this wasn't a team that fell apart, lost its way. You saw them playing hard to the very end. They beat the Rams 2 weeks ago. They ended the season in a way that I thought it was impossible for them to move on from. This was of all the coaching firings that I expected, this was one that I didn't think was going to happen. And I really did not think they were going to move on from GM Terry Fontenot. So quite frankly, I'm very surprised. I don't know what the direction's going to be. They've got Michael Penix and Kirk Cousins. What's the quarterback situation going to look like? It feels like the ownership team is moving on from both to go in a different direction for the quarterback. And I think that's why they're doing this. I don't believe in that decision. I don't think they made the right decision. I think both guys deserved an opportunity to come back next year. But again, they're making this was a choice made by Mr. Blank, and they're moving in a different direction that, frankly, I just don't agree with.
Yeah, I don't understand it, right? Because you ask yourself the responsibilities of both both the GM and the head coach, right? General manager, his responsibility is for acquiring talent. He's done that. We talked about Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, right? And then you talked about the young guys on the defense side of football, James Pierce Jr., Billy Bowman, Xavier Watts, Jalen Walker. The list can go on and on. He's hit on these draft picks, right? And it was starting to show for this defense. Now, so the GM has done his job. Then you look at the head coach, right? And the head coach, you want your guys, you want to believe that this team is playing hard for their head coach. They finished the season off winning 4 in a row, right? And we're right there competing to win the NFC South, and you give or take a couple football games, right? And you look at what was the real issue. The real issue was the quarterback issue, right? And this was a situation that happened way last year, right? And we watched the Netflix documentary, we was like, wait, I think they pulled Kirk Cousins too early, right? Like they still had a shot to make the playoffs. And I understand wanting to go to the young guy, to Michael Penix, but I think that if I'm the owner, what he should have did was he should have walked downstairs into that locker room, into the front office of the general manager and said, listen, this is the year y'all figure it out, right? Because when you fire the general manager, you fire the head coach, you have you're potentially bringing in new scheme changes defensively. You're bringing in new situations offensively. You're bringing in things where they may not mesh with the players in which you have. So I disagree with it. And I think that they finished this season off strong. And potentially if they'd have kept everything in place and just figured out the quarterback position, they could have been one of those teams that you be like, you know what? We better watch out for them because they could be damn good next year.
I think they could have been the favorite to come back in the division next year. I mean, when you think of how well it's taken a long few years for them to figure it out defensively. And it felt like this year they finally figured it out defensively. And those young guys that you mentioned all played major roles, all starting positions. That's why I was so confused why Terry Fontenot was roped into this as a part of the firing. I thought Raheem might go. I thought he saved his job with the coaching he did towards the end of the year and how well this team played when they knew they were out of it. That is an indicator of a well-coached football team.
Yep.
I think the reality is here, this is a message and this is a lesson for how it goes in the NFL. When you mess up the quarterback position,
I was just gonna say
it doesn't matter.
Yep.
It doesn't matter.
You start that clock. Yeah, you start that clock when you draft a quarterback, right? You start that clock to where you like all the pressure's on you and you have to deliver when you draft that franchise quarterback.
And something here didn't add up because Kirk Cousins left Minnesota, a place he really liked, a system he really liked, a coach he really loved, and where his family really wanted to be and stay. You saw that in the documentary, how heartbroken his children and his wife were to leave their home. They did not want to leave. He left because Kevin O'Connell was honest with him and told him that they were going to be drafting a young quarterback. And that was something Kirk did not want to be a part of. Then he goes to Atlanta. He signs in Atlanta because he is expecting to be the man. So there's some conflicting reporting here because it does not add up that they told Kirk Cousins they were going to draft a young quarterback. There's no way that they told him that, because why would he have left Minnesota for that exact reason to then move to Atlanta? It just doesn't add up.
And maybe that's the issue, right? That maybe what the issue is that the ownership asked the general manager and the head coach, said, "Are y'all sure about drafting this young quarterback?" And then when he decided to put the young quarterback in the football game and bench Kirk Cousins, he said, "Are y'all sure about playing this young quarterback?" And then that didn't work out, and maybe those two guys were responsible for that decision, and that's why. And then now watching Kirk Cousins, we're on a 4-game winning streak. The owner's like, "Oh yeah, y'all messed this one up, right?" And so maybe that's the only way out where I could say or understand some type of explanation, is that the owner is holding those two guys accountable for making a decision to draft and to play above Kirk Cousins after he handed him that money.
It just, that there's something about what has been said, and I've been around Kirk Cousins. I think people know, based off of how much they've seen him on the Netflix series, who his teammates say he is. Kirk is a very very well respected, high integrity man in the NFL. He's respected by everybody. So when he came out and said what he said about, he was very disappointed when they drafted Michael Penix. He was very disappointed because he was under the impression he left the place he really loved to be the man. That's what his expectations were. Then they went and drafted a quarterback in the top 10 of the NFL draft. We know what the expectations are when guys are drafted that early. It does not matter if you pretend you think you're going to sit them. The noise gets loud. That's how this goes. When they did that decision, that was the decision that put Kirk in a bad spot. And this always felt like, okay, did you guys have a plan? Because I don't think you did. And I think when we look back at this, eventually the truth will come out about the fact that they did not tell Kirk Cousins that this was a part of the plan. And I believe Kirk. I believe that, because why would he have left Minnesota? It just doesn't add up. And I think now, to your point, they end the year on a 4-game win streak under Kirk Cousins under center. And now ownership's going, hey guys, why did we draft that young quarterback? We gave this guy $160 million, this totally guaranteed contract to be our guy. And then we moved off of him. For what reason? And it honestly didn't make sense when you and I went back and watched the games from last year. And it makes less sense now that you saw him start the year. And he's such a great teammate, and he does such a good job of fostering and mentoring guys that sometimes I think if he caused a little bit of a stink, it might have actually been a better thing to get him to start. But I think that Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot will both find jobs in the NFL again pretty soon.
100%. Seems like it's one of those things where winning actually backfired, right?